Welcome to Level Check Roblox. This is your in-game parent review for Block Tales, as voted for by you, the community. But don't worry, the other games that we had listed will get reviewed also in the near future. We're here today to answer one question. Is this game suitable for your child? Remember, for younger kids, nobody knows them better than you do. So it's my job at Level Check to play these games so you don't have to, give you a summary of what they're all about, and then you can decide if they're suitable for your child. Timestamps are in the description as always, and if you wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up button to help other people find this kind of content, that would really help me out. But without further ado, let's dive into what this game is all about. So, searching for this on the Roblox homepage, I found Block Tales Demo 5 with a 95% like rating, though a smaller active player base of around 1.3k. It's got a maturity level minimal tag for violence, occasional and mild. Now, being a minimal level game, it does mean it is automatically pushed to everybody with a Roblox account from the ages of 5 up. There wasn't too many issues here with the thumbnails, other than this guy looking a bit creepy with his big sword and mask, but other than that, it does look quite blocky and fun, and we'll find out what that's all about in a little bit. But it says here, multiplayer turn-based RPG inspired by Paper Mario. That's an interesting one. 149 million visits, 23rd of 2nd 2024. It's been around quite a while, but this is the one that we're most interested in. 20th of June 2026. That's the game test version that I will be playing today. So let's dive in and find out what it is all about. So one of the things that immediately jumps out about this game is this is not like traditional Roblox games. There is no lobby that I would normally review. There are no user interface purchases and pop-ups and things like that. This is very different, and it really does play as a RPG. It almost doesn't feel like Roblox apart from the 2D blocky backgrounds and characters. Now, as an RPG, there is a story that you follow through this game, and you have various different things on the screen that allow you to do different attacks. You collect items. It's a turn-based combat system. So all in all, it really is a traditional RPG like you would have expected to find in the early 2000s. That is not to take anything away from this game. It's just simply to set the context of what you would be looking at. Now, from a gameplay perspective, it is very repetitive. The fights are very similar. The whole storyline progresses nicely, but there are a lot of different environments to explore, and with that does come a lot of different puzzles. There is everything from obbies to items that you need to find to open other areas, to certain skills you have to use to progress through certain areas. I must admit, from a gameplay point of view, I actually really liked this game, apart from the repetitive nature of the combat, but once you discover that you can run away from most fights, it then becomes a trade-off as to whether or not you fight to level up your character or whether you just run to preserve time and get through this. Now, to manage your expectations as a parent, I put about 6 hours into this game and found that I was around the area of the end of chapter 3 of 5, so arguably just over halfway through the game. From the clips that I've shown so far, you get an idea of where the game is going, so let's head over to the level check risk review to check its suitability for children. Now, with my risk review, it runs on a star-based system. 0 stars is minimal or not present at all, and 5 stars is the absolute maximum. Now, this risk review does need to be split into 2 parts because there is a huge tone shift and mood change in the game when the player hits the end of Chapter 2. So let's go through and just do a very quick risk review of Chapters 1 and 2, because I think that's probably the part that most children would play, and then we'll just recap with the bits from the end of Chapter 2 onwards. So look, with violence, I like to consider things like whether or not the combat is realistic, whether or not there is the essence of blood or gore, and things that are genuinely going to cause distress to younger children. Now, this game, there's 2 parts, I think, for violence. The first one is the noticeable bit you see here, which is the combat screens that are turn-based. It is very comical, it's very cartoony. There isn't a great deal in terms of violence here for me, I don't think. I'd probably say that maybe age 5, it might not be suitable, but even then, I think that would have to be someone that's quite sensitive. Arguably an age 5 to 6, maybe even 7-year-old might struggle with the defense mechanics of the game, but from a violence point of view, I really don't think it's too much of a problem. The only other thing though is that parts of the story and in the cutscene sequences, there are things like this where one of the NPCs is getting beaten up by other characters. Some of that I don't necessarily think was possibly necessary. That could be a little bit more distressing to the younger viewers, but honestly, any child around 7, maybe 8 ups, unless they are significantly sensitive to violence, I don't think there'll be too much problem. Moving on to psychological and emotional, then, in the first two chapters, before you get to the end of chapter 2, there is very little here that is going to be psychologically a problem for your child. Here I'm talking about the things that are going to cause real world nightmares, cause significant fear, or have any kind of adverse effect on your child's mood. Arguably, I think the most adverse thing that they'll experience in the first two chapters is going to be something in the region of being frustrated and having to get to grips rather, with the game mechanics, because I found it quite hard at first to understand the blocking mechanics of it. Therefore, you would die very quickly. But other than that, once you learn that learning curves, if you haven't quit from frustration, then I'd say this game, again, is probably suitable anything from the ages of maybe 6 or 7 up. The last part I'd like to review is around finance, and that's things like microtransactions and whether or not the game developers are going on a cash grab. And for me, this game is awesome because I didn't actually see anything that you can purchase in this at all using real world currency. So things that I would normally look at, such as aggressive pop-ups or untransparent things or wasteful purchases, none of that is present in this game, which is awesome to see. They have got a in-game ticks system where you, every time you go through a battle, you get tickets that you can use to buy items in the shop. There's also a hidden currency called bucks that you can find as you go around as well. But all of this is within the game. There is nothing at all that I have seen, unless I've missed it, that you can spend Robux on. So because I've gone through this quite quickly, here are the summaries of all of those different things. I'm going for 1 star on violence because of this kind of thing, but the combat is generally okay. Psychological, half a star, if that, for the first 2 chapters, because there really isn't a lot, I think, that causes a problem. And 0 stars for finance because there is absolutely nothing at all to buy. I should also point out that these are my own opinions. I am not endorsed by Roblox or the game developers to say anything specific. This is just my view as a parent to children when I look at the suitability of games. The last thing I wanted to talk about quickly was, although I said at the start of the video, and this is marketed as mostly a solo player game, you can still talk to people in the game using the chat function at the bottom. It looks different to the chat function on all of the other Roblox games, so I don't know if the filtering is the same in this instance. But the other thing is that even though it is mostly single player, you can still invite others to join a party and then talk with them that way as well. So just something else to be aware of, because you can turn that function off. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we need to review what happens after Chapter 2, starting off with violence here. The actual combat mechanics, in my view, don't really change. Okay, sure, some of the monsters look a bit more creepy, but the actual game mechanics don't change, and it doesn't really look any more realistic than some of the stuff that you see early on. The bigger issue, though, comes from the storyline changing and the mood of that, and we'll cover that in a sec. But I think really the main thing for me are things like at the end of Chapter 2, you see one character stabbing themselves with a poisoned blade that then goes ahead and turns them into this mutated Venus flytrap looking monster. And don't get me wrong, I understand that for a lot of older kids around 12, they'd be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know what you're talking about, it's not bad at all. But for those younger ones, if they even got this far through the game, then that could be a little bit distressing to them to see that. There's also a lot of heavy emotional things, so we'll just cover that as well. Such things like a father trying to save his son from dying after he's been poisoned. That, to me, sort of starts to draw the line where I would say maybe from the ages of around 8 and up, possibly even more if the child is a bit sensitive. That would be where I would draw the line. So you have to ask whether or not you'd be happy for them to continue playing at that point. Honestly, my view now is that anything Chapter 3 and onwards should not be played by any child under the age of 10. And the reason why I'm going for the age of 10 is because I think that's kind of around the age at school that teachers start to talk to the kids about their emotions, really dial into things like mental health, and take a focus on how people think about themselves as well as how they treat their peers. Towards the end of the chapter, there's a section where you end up being warped off into a different plane of existence, where you start to have all of these different mental themes brought to the front of your mind. The sorts of things that we're talking about here is intense greed. There's lots here on loneliness, and then it borders on and goes into hatred. I might have even missed some of the other things off, but some of the things the NPCs are talking about are things like how little you value yourself, how little your impact is on the world, whether your life is even worth living, all of the sorts of things that stop just shy of that horrific S-lettered word that we really don't want kids knowing about. Now, I I've got to say, I don't know why the developers went down this route. I think it was completely unnecessary, and for me, it ruined the starting of the story, which would have been suitable for everyone. In my view alone, this is not suitable under a minimum level maturity, knowing that kids as young as 5, 6, or 7 could eventually get to this if they solved all the puzzles and played the game for long enough. It just isn't suitable. So whilst the combat I might bump up to 2 stars just purely because of the sort of nature of things that you're fighting, the psychological and emotional for me, and this is less about psychological, but emotionally I have to bump this to at least 4 stars because this sort of thing really shouldn't be. I don't think it's not necessary for any game, let alone putting it into one with a minimum rating based on what we saw in chapters 1 and 2. So in terms of a quick summary then, for chapters 1 and 2, I would recommend an age group of probably around 7 or 8. Generally speaking, for combat, there's very little here that's anything to worry about. It certainly isn't more realistic or likely to cause distress. Psychological, along the same sort of lines as well. And financially, there is absolutely nothing to buy in this game, so there is 0 stars for financial. Now, moving on to chapters at the end of chapter 2 and moving into chapter 3 and onwards, I wouldn't recommend that to be played by anybody under the age of 10. There is extreme thought-provoking themes here of greed, isolation, and hatred. It does get really quite dark and warped. There's a heavy mental, I think, impact here of making beyond just what you're reading on the screen, giving that player time to actually think in their mind and consider the things that they are reading about. Honestly, to me, it's very difficult to put myself in the shoes of an 8 or 9-year-old, but even I know that it's even early teens that would find some of this stuff disturbing. Therefore, it certainly shouldn't be in a minimal level maturity game. And so I would say, no, this isn't suitable for most children based on those themes alone. Now, I get it. Some children will sit there and go, I really don't see the problem. And that is absolutely fine if you've got that level of resilience in your brain to think that. But generally, from a parent's point of view, I wouldn't expose my children to anything like this. And I think what's probably worse is that you wouldn't experience this until you've been playing the game for such a long time, and therefore a lot of parents would miss this part of the game thinking, oh, it's all absolutely fine based on chapters 1 and 2 alone. All in all, I think I gave this a pretty thorough test. I put about 6.5 hours into it. I couldn't beat the level 3, or rather chapter 3 boss hatred. I'm sure everyone will let me know about that in the comments, but it is what it is and I'm still working on it. I hope you found this review useful today. If you have, please just hit that thumbs up button for me to help other parents know specifically about this type of game, because I think that finding is actually really important. And subscribe to Level Check Roblox for more in-game parent reviews just like this one to try and help decide whether games are suitable for the kids that are likely playing them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.